Coming to paperback and e-readers, Isis Dark Incubus. The goddess next door gets enthralled in a romantic entanglement with an evil incubus in this all-new Isis series adventure. Pre-order your copy of Isis Dark Incubus at Amazon.com and other online booksellers everywhere. Last week, a 15-year-old migrant allegedly participated in the shooting of a tourist inside of a store in Times Square.
The manhunt is over. The 15-year-old accused of shooting a tourist in Times Square, then turning the gun on police, is taken into custody in Westchester. And tonight, we're learning he may be connected to other crimes. Good evening. I'm Christine Johnson.
I'm Maurice Dubois. That teenager was on the run for almost 24 hours before U.S. Marshals tracked him down. Here's the moment authorities took him into custody, 15 years old, in Yonkers this afternoon. We're blurring his face because he's a minor.
A police source says he arrived in the city from Venezuela, and he is a suspect in another shooting and an armed robbery last month. CBS 2's Lori Bordenero is live now at the Midtown South Precinct, where he is being held. Lori.
And Christina, Maurice, police tell us that teenager was with his mom in Yonkers when he was caught and was crying as he was taken into custody. He is being questioned here at the precinct, and police say most likely he will be charged as a juvenile. A 15-year-old hauled off in handcuffs by U.S. Marshals in Yonkers. They tracked him down to an apartment on Saratoga Avenue. We are blurring his face and no longer identifying him because he's a minor. Investigators still inside the Yonkers home late Friday night.
The shooting incident last night in Times Square was way beyond reckless.
Police say the teen is the gunman seen in this chilling video inside JV Sports in Times Square Thursday. They say he and two other teens were trying to leave with stolen merchandise. When the security guard stopped them, the teen in white turns and pulls out a .45 caliber gun and fires at her. He misses and hits a 38-year-old tourist from Brazil in the leg.
The girl who got shot was between us two. We heard a big bang, and then we realized what happened.
While running from the scene, police say the gunman fired twice at officers before escaping into a subway.
He shot the NYPD officers who pursued him through the streets of Midtown without a single thought of who he might hit or who he might kill.
Police say the 15-year-old suspect arrived in New York from Venezuela less than 6 months ago and was living at a migrant shelter on the Upper West Side. A police source tells us he's also a suspect in a January armed robbery in the Bronx, as well as another shooting in Midtown where no one was hurt.
Less than 24 hours later, he's locked up and off our streets.
And that tourist who was struck by that stray bullet has been released from the hospital and is in good spirits. Again, that 15-year-old is in custody, and police say he's expected to be charged with attempted murder. His two friends are also in custody. We're live tonight in Midtown. Lori Bordenero, CBS 2 News.
Okay, Lori, thank you.
And do stay with CBS as we learn more about the suspect and also the investigation. We'll bring you the latest on air and online at cbsnewyork.com.
Now, in this alleged incident that took place last week in Times Square, a 15-year-old Venezuelan migrant and 3 other accomplices allegedly were in a JD sports store when they were confronted by loss prevention agents near the entrance. And as they were confronted by loss prevention agents near the entrance, these loss prevention agents alleged that they were shoplifting and wanted to try to detain these individuals until police arrived. Now, as they were looking to try to detain these individuals as related to this alleged shoplifting incident, this 15-year-old boy who was dressed in white allegedly pulled a 9mm pistol with an extended clip out of the waistband of his pants and allegedly pointed it at the loss prevention agents and fired a shot. Now, as he fired a shot to shoot to possibly kill this loss prevention agent over alleged shoplifted merchandise, he did not hit the loss prevention agent. No, who he hit was a Brazilian tourist. Now, after hitting the Brazilian tourist in the leg with this shot, this 15-year-old then fled the scene, being pursued by police officers, and after being pursued by police officers, he fired several shots at those police officers and wound up fleeing the scene. Now, after he wound up fleeing the scene, he eventually was found in upstate Yonkers, New York, and after being found in Yonkers, New York, it was revealed that this 15-year-old minor had participated in several other crimes, including a shooting in the Bronx and another shooting elsewhere. Now, after being arrested, this 15-year-old minor migrant from Venezuela was charged as an adult, and after being charged as an adult, this 15-year-old is now possibly in Rikers Island, and the Adams administration is now dealing with a black eye as related to the second violent incident regarding migrants having no respect for law enforcement, because this incident comes right after a mob of 9 migrants allegedly participated in the assault of 2 police officers who were looking to disperse an unruly mob in Times Square. And both of these incidents are major embarrassments for the Adams administration, which said that many of these migrants were looking for a better life. However, from these 2 incidents where migrants basically flagrantly showed no regard for the authority of law enforcement and showed no regard for the laws of New York City, the entire migrant crisis is looking like it's making a major turn for the worse, and it's looking like it's making a major turn for the worse because with these 2 incidents, we are seeing a complete breakdown of law and order as related to many of these migrants. And this is basically what's happening because the Adams administration sadly did not have the foresight to take a critical look at who they were bringing into New York City when Texas Governor Greg Abbott began to bus migrants up to New York City to test New York City and other blue cities' so-called sanctuary city policies. Now, as Greg Abbott was sending migrants up to New York City, Eric Adams was not really understanding how the law works, even though he was a police officer, because when it came to federal law, it was there for a reason, and it was there for a reason because federal law basically makes the nation safe, and the federal laws as related to immigration, customs, and enforcement keep the nation safe because with ICE, they can go and vet many of these individuals and make sure that their backgrounds are ones that are legitimate before they can enter the country and come to cities like New York City and have an opportunity to go and participate crimes. But this didn't matter to Eric Adams because Eric Adams, basically, what he wanted to do with this entire migrant situation was try to spite Donald Trump and his whole mindset as related to dealing with immigration, customs, and enforcement. And as he was looking to spite the former president and continue to try to virtue signal like many of his Democrat contemporaries like Bill de Blasio, Andrew Cuomo, and Kathy Hochul, and Joe Biden, he was hoping that he could create a covert contract where he could get brownie points from the Biden administration if he could show he could do a good job taking care of all of these migrants who had entered the country illegally. Unfortunately, as he was looking to try to fulfill this covert contract, he wound up finding out that he could not be able to take care of all of these migrants as far back as March of 2023, when he found out his whole Department of Homeless Services was completely overwhelmed and as related to trying to care for all of these migrants, and he wound up with a further fiscal deficit on top of the one established by former Mayor of New York, Bill de Blasio, and this basically created a situation where Eric Adams was in over his head. And as he has been in over his head, he has tried to do everything to discourage migrants who basically have no regard for New York City's laws, and they were taught to believe that they did not need to regard New York City's laws because they were taught not to regard federal laws. And if you don't follow the federal laws as related to entering a country legally, then wherever you go, the people are going to believe they could enter the country illegally. And that's what happened here in the case of this 15-year-old who at an early age was learning that he did not need to respect the laws of the United States, did not need to respect the Constitution of the United States, and did not need to respect the federal laws. This was enabled in this 15-year-old by policies of the Biden administration, and then this was further exacerbated as he was bussed up to New York by Eric Adams, who invited him, and now he's in here believing he doesn't need to respect the city's laws or respect those who follow law enforcement, such as the NYPD. This is why he fired shots at those officers and also participated in other shooting incidents. And this whole incident, again, is a major black eye to Eric Adams because this migrant, again, is only 15 years old. And at 15 years old, he's not here to achieve an American dream by going to school or going to work. No, he's here basically looking to participate in criminal behavior, and he was possibly committing criminal behavior in his own home country. Unfortunately, we possibly never would be able to get that information because our city didn't have the resources to vet these individuals the way Immigration, Customs, and Enforcement can. Because Immigration, Customs, and Enforcement, they are a government organization that is the first line of defense as related to vetting individuals like this. Because if you've got a 15-year-old who is a minor, who is unaccompanied by parents or given supervision, this was an individual who possibly would have never gotten in the country had Immigration, Customs, and Enforcement been able to do their job. Because minors are supposed to be in the supervision of parents, but this boy wasn't in the supervision of anyone, and as he wasn't in the supervision of anyone, he seems to have possibly become a juvenile delinquent, and this juvenile delinquent is basically wreaking havoc, similar to what they say Black Pookies and Ray Rays participate in, because if this is his third shooting, this is the third that we know about, then it's clear that this 15-year-old is on a road to crime, and sadly, he's been enabled to go on that road to crime due to New York Mayor Eric Adams being in his feelings about Donald Trump and his efforts to spite him. Moreover, he was so caught up with stars in his eyes as related to hopefully being able to get a cabinet position with the Biden administration that he wasn't looking out for the health, safety, and welfare of New Yorkers by bringing in these individuals who are completely unvetted and undocumented as related to who they are, because this boy could possibly be in a gang or possibly was a part of a gang for him to be committing a crime in the afternoon of New York City when teenagers are usually in their homes or wherever their shelters doing their homework or trying to learn what they can so that they can go out here and build the so-called better life that Eric Adams claims that many of the migrants want to participate in. However, this incident basically shows what happens when you try to circumvent government agencies. You wind up creating chaos. And what's really scary about this entire situation is that this entire situation is just the tip of the iceberg as related to this assault on a police officer, and two police officers, because it was two police officers in Times Square previously, and this shooting incident. These are just the tip of the iceberg as related to crimes, and in the worst case scenario, I really want people to start thinking about the fact that these migrants, yes, they come from Venezuela, but migrants are coming from all over the world to the United States, and we have basically opened a door to terrorists. And what could possibly happen in the ultimate worst case scenario is that we could have terrorists right here in New York City, and they could have been brought right in by the Adams administration and their efforts to spite Donald Trump. And because they got caught up in their feelings about Donald Trump, we could be open for a terror attack, just like the one we had in not 1993 with the World Trade Center, or the horrific tragedy that happened with 9/11. And that's the thing that flied over the head of Eric Adams, who was not thinking critically when he was out here looking to play his tit-for-tat game with Greg Abbott, as he was looking to play his tit-for-tat game and trying to maintain the sanctuary city policies of Andrew Cuomo and Bill de Blasio. He wasn't thinking about the safety of New Yorkers critically, because as someone who is a critical thinker, if I were the mayor, I would have gone and said, I'm going to repeal these sanctuary city policies, and I'm going to repeal them because they put the city in danger of being targeted by terrorists, one. And two, I would have wanted to end the sanctuary city policies because they are unconstitutional. Because under our U.S. Constitution, federal supersedes state, and when you have laws written by people who are complete imbeciles like Bill de Blasio saying that you cannot have the city working with immigration's customs enforcement, a federal organization, then that's clear that the laws are being written by imbeciles, because when it comes to our laws, federal supersedes state, and we need the help of immigration, customs, and enforcement in order to be able to vet individuals like this 15-year-old who are a clear and present danger. And they're a clear and present danger because you have an undocumented individual entering a country illegally and violating federal border laws, and then you have them in local areas with no regard for the authority of local law enforcement, and that is what makes them a clear and present danger. But Eric Adams, a former police officer, could not see this because he wasn't thinking critically. And what he's doing right now is putting members of the NYPD in danger, along with many residents and tourists of New York, because this whole incident is going to give people pause before they think about coming to the city, because when they think about areas like Times Square, they're no longer tourist attractions, and they're not tourist attractions because you have a lot of individual migrants in these areas. And as they're in these areas, you have people not looking to be a part of the land of opportunity. No, they're opportunists looking to prey on people. And these individuals basically are a group of ghost gangs, and they're ghosts because they cannot be found because they have no documentation or identification to identify them. And that's what makes them a major threat to all of the people in New York City. And that's what should have many people give pause, because again, in a bad case scenario, they are participating in crimes where they're assaulting police officers and participating in shootings in Times Square. But in a worst case scenario, we could have terrorists right here in New York City, and these terrorists could be motivated to plan a terror attack, especially now that many have been polarized by incidents such as the ones going on in Israel and Gaza right now. So New York Mayor Eric Adams has basically made New York City less safer and destroyed the quality of life here in New York City. That's what he's done with this whole situation by opening up the door to migrants, meeting them up at the Port Authority bus terminal. He has basically made life extremely unsafe for New Yorkers, and that's something New Yorkers really need to think about as related to this migrant crisis, which continues to get progressively worse, similar to what I have seen in Paul Joseph Watson videos where he talked about migrants in other parts of the world, such as Sweden, such as the UK, such as France, where they were told, oh, they want a better quality of life. But how can you get a better quality of life if you have no education, no skills, and no real ability to be able to build a life because you don't even have the working papers. Critical question I want to ask many of these blue party types who believe just bringing people into the country in the millions of people is going to help improve their situation. And when I look at this whole situation, again, it proves the point of why we needed Ellis Island in the early 20th century, because Ellis Island was a place like ICE that was designed to vet individuals to make sure that there were not criminals looking to try to come into our country, people looking to participate in malicious intents towards our country. That's what Ellis Island was all about, vetting individuals to make sure that they were here to try to improve their quality of life. Moreover, making sure that these individuals had education and skills that would allow them to go and start and build businesses if they were given documentation to be able to work in this country. But many on the left weren't thinking about that as they were letting migrants in. No, they were thinking about trying to bring in as many people as possible, not ever thinking about the long-term impact of people's health and safety, and not thinking about the more important things, and that you want to get people who enter the country legally because you want to be able to have paperwork on those individuals so you can know who they are and what they're doing and what their purpose is in the country. That's why ICE is important. However, there were many on the left who wanted to say that ICE was racist, and now many of these individuals, after all of these incidents, are now really rethinking their positions. And you have even many members of the city council looking to try to backpedal on the sanctuary city policies established by the de Blasio administration. And as they try to avoid accountability, what they're trying to do now is go out and say, oh, these were laws signed by Bill de Blasio, but they were written by the city council and Bill de Blasio, and they can easily be repealed, and they can easily be repealed not by the city council overturning these laws, but because these laws in and of themselves are completely unconstitutional. And they're unconstitutional because, again, they interfere in federal affairs as related to dealing with federal business, and ICE is under federal jurisdiction, and with ICE being under federal jurisdiction, these sanctuary city laws are completely unconstitutional. And if Eric Adams was a critical thinker like I was, he would have understood that when he took office in 2021, but instead he didn't really want to think about that critically because all he wanted to do was shuck and jive, and that's what the cream of wheat man wanted to do. He wanted to shuck and jive, hoping again to get those brownie points with the Biden administration, which has put its distance between itself and Eric Adams, and also with Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York, who has also put distance between herself. But this shows how these migrants could actually impact her, because this guy went all the way into Yonkers, and that is the danger of these kind of individuals. Again, when they commit their crimes, they could flee to other parts of the city or the state, or like the 9 individuals, some of them just flee to California, and we don't know where these individuals are, and we don't know what they're doing. So this entire migrant crisis has made New York City less safer, has doubled our homeless population, and when I look at Eric Adams, he is the one accountable for creating this migrant crisis, and he needs to be held accountable on Election Day in 2025, whether it be a primary or an election, because it's clear from these incidents he has made New York City a less safer place than it was under guys like Rudy Giuliani, who basically cleaned up New York City. But under Eric Adams, we are basically in a New York City Times Square that is just as bad as the dark days of the 1970s and 1980s, because I remember growing up in that New York City of the 80s and basically going to places like Park West High School and seeing all of the dirt, the grime, and the sleaze, and basically seeing a lot of businesses like this one, JD Sports, having to deal with all kinds of individuals, making life miserable for everyone. And that's basically where we're back at, all due to Eric Adams and his need to virtue signal as related to trying to get back at Donald Trump. And sadly, he's basically proven Donald Trump's point as related to this entire migrant situation. And that basically proves the importance of ICE and proves that ICE provides an essential job in maintaining the safety of not only New Yorkers, but maintaining the safety of all here in the United States. Now, if you want to see me be able to make more videos like this, you can send a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. And if you want to pick up some of my positive black fiction on the SJS Direct imprint, you can find all of those books on Amazon.com in paperback, and Barnes & Noble and Walmart and Target in paperback, and on digital format on Amazon's Kindle, Draft to Digital, Google Play, and other online digital booksellers. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Coming to paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, Illuminati. The man who rules the world takes on the head of the global elite in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Pre-order your copy of John Haynes, Illuminati on Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited, The Man Crisis. Learn why so many men are struggling to find their way in an increasingly gynocentric world in The Man Crisis. Get your copy of The Man Crisis in paperback and Kindle Unlimited today. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.